Hello, everybody. It's spring here. It's a beautiful day outside, and I have a book review for you. This one is a new release from Megan Nolan, Ordinary Human Failings. So this one's set in London in the 90s. Ordinary Human Failings is the story of Carmel and her family, Irish immigrants, whose youngest member, 10-year-old Lucy, has been involved in the death of a neighbor's 3-year-old child on their housing estate. Tom, an ambitious and amoral reporter, hopes to exploit the story of the child's death and her family's low social status and moves them into a hotel. In asking more to find out the family's sordid past, he discovers the family's story of teen pregnancy, alcoholism, and hopelessness, but no major secrets. The death may have just been down to ordinary human failings. Megan Nolan, is an award-winning writer, the author of Acts of Desperation, and this is her second novel. When I picked this one, I was curious about the story of what happened and why, or learning about the family's secrets. And actually, it's not that kind of book, in that it's not a mystery or a thriller or a sort of typical story that way. It's literary fiction that's focused on the everyday tragedy of life and character studies. Carmel is our main character. She's Lucy's mother, and she had her when she was a teenager. And she's the most well-drawn character of the bunch, I think, or the one we spend the most time with her brother, father, and deceased mother also explored. And we get a little bit about Tom, the reporter, as well, his sort of mindset mostly. The author explores how they're unhappy, but in an ordinary kind of way, an ordinary kind of unhappy. They have their tragedies, but they're everyday tragedies and not uncommon ones. Actually, it was nice in a way to not read about big trauma for a change. I feel like quite a few books I've read lately have just been sort of heavy trauma to the point of melodrama, I guess. But it did feel odd to not really get more into Lucy, for example. We don't get much at all about how she's feeling and what happened. We get none of the story of the family who lost a child and what the child was really like either. The author wants to look at the people on the sidelines whose story we rarely get to see, and also the way that horrible things can happen to fairly ordinary people without there being some huge family secret that caused it. The book also talks a little bit about the way that Carmel's family isn't socially acceptable, and that Tom wants to exploit this to create a narrative of the degenerate Irish family and the saintly family who lost their child. They're sort of perfect pillars of the community, which would play so satisfyingly to his readership. He looks down on Carmel and her family and the others on the estate as well, and they also look down on Carmel's family. There's partly a reason for this. The two men in the family are alcoholics, the family are antisocial, and social services have been called because Lucy was being neglected by her mother. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy, I guess. I love the idea of this. It was a little hard to adjust to at first because I thought the book was one genre, sort of in the maybe mystery or sort of crime arena, and it was more of a social portrait. But once I got into it, I really liked the way the author writes, but it's not wholly successful in what it wants to achieve. It feels almost callous the way that the book ignores the awful and tragic events at its heart and the family who are affected, like losing their child. Especially as the author is at pains to point out that the reporter is amoral for not caring about the people he writes about. So it's, by that I mean, he's kind of exploiting people, but in a way, the book is also feels callous because you're kind of like, well, how are these people doing and what happened and who are they? And we just sort of get nothing about the people that are the most affected at the core of this tragedy. The setup of having an interesting case at its heart means that you want to know more about what happened. It's dissatisfying to not find out more here. It's like putting the gun or the knife in the first act of a play and then not using it. You're sort of anticipating it, and it sort of never comes. it doesn't completely work, basically. But I do think it's a really interesting idea to focus on the ordinary people involved or ordinary families that are often lost or even dehumanized in the headlines. So I think that's actually really good. And I like what the author was exploring. On another level, I didn't really like any of the characters. I liked the way the author wrote them, and they're all well drawn and they make sense and all that kind of thing. But they were generally quite self-involved and selfish. It can be hard to read about characters you don't like, even if you do understand why they are the way they are. A child has been killed, and Carmel's father and brother are only thinking about their own wasted lives, their own feelings, and the next drink, basically. And Carmel is not all that worried about Lucy. Her child is a stranger to her, and she's thinking about the love she doesn't have and not about the love that she could be giving. And Tom is a bit of a typical newspaper villain, using everyone and looking down on them. He didn't feel... I feel like there could have been more to him. So I'm in two minds about this one. I think the author was trying to do something different and exploring something. And while it wasn't completely successful, it wasn't entirely unsuccessful either. And I liked the point that the book makes about the way that there is no big family secret here that caused the death of the child. Tragedy, death, even murder can happen out of ordinary circumstances as well as extraordinary ones. So yeah. There's some good stuff here. I really do hope that some of you check this one out. I would love to hear what you think about it as well. I think some of you might find it really interesting. And I think sometimes going in knowing that it's more of a character study, or it's not the sort of, I feel like the book was sold to me a little bit as being mystery or crime or having that story at the heart of itself. And that can be difficult if that's not what the book is going to deliver on, basically. So I think maybe going in knowing what the author is trying to do, you might get a little bit more out of it. And I'm super interested to see what the author does next, because there's some really good writing here. And I like that this author is kind of looking at things in a different way and looking at different angles of stories and things like that. So this one is for lovers of literary fiction, character studies, and UK authors. It's something a bit different, and the writing itself and the concept is good. So thank you to the publisher for the copy of this one for review, and thank you for watching. You can check out some of my other videos. I also have another channel and social, so you can find links below if you want more of that. And if you want to hang out again, remember to like and subscribe. And you can always leave a comment, let me know what you thought, or let me know what else you might want to see. Thank you.